I'd like to call the regular council meeting for the town of Bay-Westfield on Monday, January 29th, 2023 to order at 7:02 p.m. We respectfully acknowledge that Bay-Westfield exists on the traditional Woolstook-Way land. The lands of Wabanaki people are recognized in a series of peace and friendship treaties to establish an ongoing relationship of peace, friendship, and mutual respect between equal nations. The river that runs by our town is known as Woolstook, along which live the Woolstook-Way, the people of the beautiful and bountiful river. We, the staff and elected representatives, pay respect to the elders, past and present, and descendants of this land. Good evening, everyone. This is our second big snowstorm of the year. We've had it fairly easy so far, so I just wanted to take a moment to thank our first responders, our snow control operators, our nurses and doctors, basically everyone that doesn't get a snow day today, that goes out, who works in all of these conditions to keep us safe and comfortable and able to get from point A to point B and do so without being comfortable themselves. So just a special thank you to them. Also, it's exam week for high school, and I particularly wanted to mention this because exam week marks this year, 2023, marks the point where our teachers and students have just completed the first full, normal, in-person semester since 2019. And they deserve congratulations on getting through to this point and completing that milestone. So best of luck to all the kids on their exams and the teachers who have to mark them and then do turnaround for the next semester. So thank you very much. Item 4, record of attendance. Let the record reflect that we have a full roster of attendance with the exception of Councillor Day, who is on sabbatical, so sends her regrets. Item 5, agenda approval. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Bay-Westfield approve the agenda of January 23rd, 2023 as presented. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Do I have a second? Councillor Bailman, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Item 6, disclosure of conflict of interest. Are there any? There being none, we'll move on to item 7, public hearings, presentations, delegations, petitions. Item 7A, Dillon Consulting, Municipal Plan and Zoning Bylaw, and we have Jennifer Brown here with us tonight from Dillon Consulting to do a presentation on the upcoming Municipal Plan and Zoning Bylaw work that has to be done. Jennifer?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to share my screen. It'll just take me a moment. Can you see the full screen presentation?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. It may occur that you're not going to see me advance the slides, so please interrupt if that's the case. Thank you for having me this evening. I regretfully am not there in person. I hope to be there next opportunity. What I'm here this evening to do is just to give you a kind of high-level overview of what we're going to undertake in terms of updates to your municipal plan and your zoning bylaw. As a result of kind of undertaking this new area through local governance reform. I'll also be going over just briefly my role now with Bay-Westfield as planning director and what that looks like and how that will kind of be rolled out. I'll give a brief introduction for any new faces in the room of who I am, my upcoming role, like I said, give you kind of an overview of what the Dillon team is available to support you with as well. A very brief introduction of planning and the connection to local governance reform. And we'll go over that municipal plan and zoning bylaw and then the process, what we're planning to do, the timeline that we're attempting to do it under, which is frankly quite aggressive, but I think it's achievable. And we'll discuss very quickly next steps. I shouldn't take up more than 10 minutes of your time. Please interrupt me with any questions, but also Obviously, I'll have time at the end for questions should you have them. So brief introduction. So I'm a land use and community planner. I've been doing this for about roughly 10 years. My experience, it really sits in federal, provincial, and municipal planning. I've got a background in environmental planning and assessment beyond kind of just the municipal planning lens. I do some recreation planning, active transportation planning, and my kind of bread and butter is really the regulatory and administrative planning and process kind of wheelhouse. I've been doing work with Bay-Westfield since I started with Dylan in 2019. I'm very appreciative of having an opportunity to continue that relationship. And I think that with kind of the upcoming changes, the hope is that we'll be able to kind of expand that relationship and let it evolve to kind of next steps to see what we're capable of. So as acting planning director, I'll review complex permits that come through the town, review PAC reports and processes to ensure compliance with the Community Planning Act, as well as your municipal plan and zoning bylaw. Review or draft, depending on the complexity, municipal planning zoning bylaw amendment reports or amendments, and processes to ensure compliance with, again, the CPA, your municipal plan and zoning bylaw. I'm really there to support what David Taylor has very competently, exceedingly competently done over the past however long David's been there. I feel like as long as I've been a planner, he's definitely been there. David does an excellent job as your development officer, and I'm just really, and John, your CAO, put this perfectly when we were discussing this, I'm there to build your bench strength. So I'm there to ensure that there's a level of comfort with the processes that come out through local governance reform. Some of that may be a lens to future statements of provincial interest. Changes in legislation that we are anticipating will continue to roll out over the next couple of years. And, you know, I'm very aware that Bay-Westfield has in the past had incentivized or attempted to incentivize and continues to do so growth. And so bringing in that kind of lens to what other communities are doing in terms of growth, you know, that's where that bench strength, I think, lends and supports what the town has a history of doing. And I just hope to kind of contribute to it in a meaningful way over the next term. So in terms of the Dylan team, so I'll be the planning director, but we do have a total of 8 planners that kind of act as my bench. There's 4 in New Brunswick total, including myself. We have 1 in PEI and 3 planners in Nova Scotia. They kind of act as my backup a little bit. So if things do get a little hectic, I've got folks to lean on for support. Our planning team is supported by civil engineers, which work with your staff already. You've also in the past have worked with our water and wastewater engineering team. We've got GIS analysts and environmental professionals that I have on hand to support me with any of those complex issues. So keeping all of that in mind of who I am and what the plan is, we look at planning and how local governance reform initiatives kind of connected or kind of push forward some specific items around planning. We get into this registered professional planner requirement. So the intention here from the minister initially and continues to be so far is that planning work is intended to be overseen by a planner. So the legislation has effectively made that a requirement. So the other kind of big piece here is the requirement around updates to your bylaws. So specifically what I'm looking at are planning related bylaws related to supporting development, administration of development throughout the new municipal boundary. So we are, I alluded to this earlier around statements for provincial interest. We are expecting to see local governance, it's not done. So we're expecting to see some approaches to legislation change, some expectations are expected to evolve. I mean, a lot of this yes, they've had a year to kind of plan it out, but this first year will be really an exercise in figuring out what works. So there will be a bit of fumbling through at the beginning, I think, on our end, but also on the province's end. So hopefully there'll be some feedback mechanisms for council and staff to go back to the province and kind of let them know what's working and what's not. So as I mentioned, with Dylan and myself acting as the planning director, the intention here is to delegate authority to your development officer. So no change from kind of your regular day-to-day. David Taylor will still act as your development officer. In terms of oversight, those parameters have been set in place just recently actually by the province. And so David and I will continue to work closely together to ensure that all of those boxes are checked. So in terms of those updates to bylaws, the big thing in Bay-Westfield is obviously incorporating that new area. What you're seeing here is a map of, the former town of Bay-Westfield and the LSD of Westfield East. So we put those together. We obviously have to do some amendments to your bylaws to allow for this unplanned area in Westfield East to become planned. What that means is essentially providing a consistent land use framework through the municipality through updates to your existing, the former municipality, Bay-Westfield, updates to that municipal plan, and updates to the zoning bylaw to incorporate these lands into kind of your existing framework. However, it's not lost on me whatsoever that this new area that's becoming folded into the municipality has, some unique concerns and some unique challenges that, a lot of have. We're going to make sure that we take the time to do some public engagement to ensure that when we're creating those regulations, that they're meeting the expectations of the community, but also the public interest. With the whole point here of providing council with that policy direction so that you can make representative decisions of the new town of Bay-Westfield. So when we talk about municipal plan and zoning bylaw amendments, we're looking at obviously an update to your policy to ensure that they're in line with existing and future development in former the former Bay-Westfield, and then the LSD of Westfield East. So what we need to do there is update the future land use map as well to give you insight into kind of what's there, but also what the potential is for these areas. Do the same with the zoning bylaw and the zoning map. The other thing to keep in mind here is, yes, the main focus of our municipal plan and zoning bylaw amendments are to incorporate Westfield East. However, it's an opportunity for us to address any potential points that currently exist in the municipal plan and zoning bylaw. When the document is open, it's prime time to make those changes. I know that there were some changes early in 2022 around making adjustments to allow for more of a growth mindset. If there are opportunities to advance that mindset and that agenda, we can do that now. So in terms of project process and timeline, this looks exactly the same for those of you who were part of the municipal plan update and the zoning bylaw update that for 2019 and 2020. Same exact process. The legislation really sets it out quite linearly. What we're looking at is land use review and analysis, which has already kicked off. We started that the first of the new year, fresh back. Engagement, the land use review and analysis plus engagement really feeds into that policy drafting piece. So that gives us an idea of, the background information plus the public info and staff and council, that information combined to provide us approaches to the big ticket items, to housing, to commercial and industrial land, to environmental conservation, flooding, things like that. So we have a full package of how we're going to move forward with those big ticket items. Once we kind of have an idea, we circle back and kind of ground truth those with the public through another round of engagement. Then we'll draft the document. There can be the arrows here suggest that there is an opportunity for us to loop back from approach back to engagement. If we really feel, if we're working with David and with the community and council, and we really feel like we've just not got it, that's when we go back out to the community again to understand what maybe we're missing out on. There's always option to do more engagement to make sure that folks are aware that this process is happening, but also understand and build kind of some capacity in the community for understanding how these municipal plan policies as well as zoning bylaws will impact their day-to-day life. So we're attempting to have those amendments done by the end of March. We'll be into kind of legislative process. A bit more detail on process and timeline. This is very much a draft schedule, but I think it's helpful to know that we're hoping to hit that kind of mid-March council meeting to start that legislative process. The legislative process is lengthy, so final third reading is predicted towards the end of May. Just a quick note on engagement. So by the end of this month, we'll have an online survey prepared for release as well as an interactive map. The map component is quite interesting, and I think has been really fruitful in terms of getting an idea of what people's expectations are. It really allows them to essentially drop a pin wherever there's an important place in their community and provide feedback on why that place is important, or why that place is a nuisance, or why they're having a problem with that area. All of that really is quite contained within the map, and we've had a lot of really good luck with that tool. We're hoping to do a bit of a stack workshop as well. Combining that into that open house, combining the survey results plus the workshop information into materials for the community open house. We're hoping to go into that open house with solid drafts of what these changes and amendments would be, particularly in the form of maps. We understand that, folks are going to essentially look up their address, find out what the proposed zoning is, and see if it works for them currently and any plans they might have in the future. That's where, at that open house stage, that's where people are quite focused. We want to be very prepared when that February 21st open house hits. That's a tentative date. We're still making sure that logistics are finalized there, but we're really hoping to hit that February 21st date. And then again, we roll into shortly after, we'll roll into the legislative process. It says early April here, but as you can tell by the timeline previously, it'll be March, but the public hearing, the more public processes hit in early April. In terms of next steps, again, as I just mentioned, we're looking to publish that online survey and interactive map by the end of the month. We'll be working with kind of staff and communications to make sure the word gets out. We're in the process of setting up the templates for the open house. And then, and in terms of that communications piece becomes very important here because we've got a group of residents who have not been part of engagement around land use planning possibly ever, but definitely not under the guise of Bay-Westfield. We want to make sure that they're equipped with all the information they need to provide solid engagement and feel like they're part of this process. Their participation is critical in making sure that what we come together and provide to council is representative of, the new town of Bay-Westfield. So we'll look at the online survey interactive map, and just before we hit that open house date, we hope to provide council with a bit of a mini update here where we talk about online engagement results. we can have the option of having the open house results. So if the February meeting doesn't work, we can push that update to early March to give council an idea of what the temperature around the room is. We're quite flexible in that way, but I think we're looking at making sure that council's aware of anything that could potentially be controversial, could potentially be like an opportunity that we can provide some push on or action on in the framed as policy. We want to make sure council has several opportunities to kind of dig their teeth into the work before we hit that legislative process. So that's it for me. I appreciate your time. If you do have any questions, I'm very happy to take them.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's a great presentation, as always. You know, one of the questions I was going to have is what kind of public engagement, but you had that covered in the presentation, so thank you for that. I just have a quick question before I open it up to the rest of council. So in terms of the public engagement piece, what would your goal be for the number of engagements? What should we be shooting for?
So that's a great question, Your Worship. I appreciate that. What we have been kind of conceptualizing is that we want to make sure that we exceed voter turnout. So if your voter turnout in this past election was 30%, I'm not quite sure, I didn't look up the stats before this, but if your voter turnout was, you know, let's say 30%, we'd like to exceed it. So we'd like to hit 35 to 40%. Engagement numbers are very difficult. However, they're very difficult to get the community engaged in a process like this until the very last minute. However, we have great experience engaging with the town of Bay-Westfield in the past. It has proven itself to be a very engaged and very aware community. I'm not worried about those folks inside the former town boundary. I am concerned about the numbers in East Westfield. I want to make sure there's a concentrated effort to get those folks participating. In terms of kind of solid numbers, I'm looking at percentage for sure. I hope that is good enough.
Yeah, no, that is good, Jennifer. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from council for Jennifer on the presentation or anything in it?
Did you talk about 30% of the LSD or 30% of Bay-Westfield as a whole?
I think it's the former portion of Westfield West. Is that correct? Because that's really the portion of the town that's going to be most affected by the change in these bylaws. Any other additional questions? No? Well, I guess that's it, Jennifer. Your presentation was too comprehensive, so you covered all of it. But we look forward to this, you know, to this process rolling out, and you know, we'll work to increase the engagement as much as possible through our communications officer to get the word out, to make sure that we have as many people engaging in this as possible. So thank you very much, and appreciate you joining us here today, Jen. Thanks. So the motion on the table is that the Council of the Town of Bay-Westfield receive and file the information as presented. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Balcom. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you. Item 7B, roads accessible to off-road vehicles bylaw. We have Vance Johnson from Quad NB and Rob Burke with the Bay-Westfield ATV Club number 37 here for a public presentation. Because of the weather, Mr. Johnson is joining us virtually. Mr. Burke is here in person. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And I believe Mr. Johnson is first on the list for presentation. So I'll open the floor to you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of the meeting, and hopefully we'll be able to answer any questions you may have. I'm assuming everybody can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So earlier today I forwarded to Rick a PDF. I don't know if you all have a copy of it, but we'll just sort of breeze through it here rather quickly. I know you've already been exposed to some of the information that's in it, but I just want to touch base on a couple of things that are there. So who we are, the New Brunswick All-Terrain Vehicle Federation, we're now known or represented as Quad NB. It's a bit of a branding thing. Our legal name is still the New Brunswick All-Terrain Vehicle Federation. So what we are is the trail manager, the ATV trail manager for the province, as appointed by the province. We're a nonprofit organization. We represent 57 clubs. In 2018, we had 22,000 members. In the last 5 years, we have grown now to 31,000. So that number represents about, I'm going to say, 55% of the registered ATVs in the province. So there's still a lot out there that haven't joined a local club, and a lot of that has to do with basically gaps in the trail network. Because we operate 4 seasons, some clubs operate 4 seasons, I should say. So because of the various gaps, we're just not there yet in completing that provincial network. That's the goal here. So our goal is certainly that. It's our mandate from government as the organization, being the trail manager. So we want to build that group of managed trails that connect the local clubs, all 57, and all the communities along the way, as much as possible for as much of the year as possible. Some it just simply cannot do in the winter or in the summer for various reasons. But so that's the long range goal. We've come a long way in doing that. We currently operate about 11,000 kilometers of trails throughout the province today. So a managed trail, and you'll find this definition in the Off-Road Vehicle Act. Managed trails are those that typically there's really only 2 criteria. We need landowner permission and we need to sign it appropriately as a managed trail. So that constitutes a managed trail under the Act. But there's a lot more to it than just the basic definition of that. There has to be a purpose behind it. And the purpose for us as the provincial organization is to make the managed trails take you somewhere and connect destinations to various places and link you to the necessary amenities along the way. So the local ATV clubs work with local landowners to acquire the permissions for the trails that they want, to do that on a local basis. And our organization assists them with the larger landowners and the provincial government departments that own land throughout the province. So we have the trail construction manual, which tells everybody what the standards are for. We have 2 levels of trails: local trails and provincial trails. So they have a slight variation in the standard of trail construction and maintenance, but there are guidelines. Those are the guidelines that are in place. So sort of I guess our mantra, if you want to call it that, is to view New Brunswick from the inside, and that is essentially to, I think the term over the COVID, the last few years was a staycation. But basically, we want people to be privy to what we have here in New Brunswick, in areas other than where the highway takes you. So we tend to advertise those places or focus on those a little bit better to that tourist, or that section of the tourist industry that is the ATV, or is sort of that nature person that wants to travel around on the ATV and take the road less traveled, if you will. So that is our focus in the advertising or the marketing, and it becomes a very large part of how we plan the managed trail network. Is how can we get from point A to point B, but we also want to see all those points C's, D's, and E's along the way. So it's a very intricate planning strategy that we have to work into the mix, and work around, of course, other user groups, landowners, and various other issues along the way. So we rely on folks like Rob here from the local club to do a lot of the legwork in their own backyard, if you will, or their own local area to help provide us with that. And Rob's done a great job of that and got us to essentially to this point where we can now travel to and from the Grand Bay area and hopefully very soon into Grand Bay to reach, again, those required amenities, food, fuel, and lodging and those sorts of things, of course. So there is quality of life associated with this. The Provincial ATV Trail Network provides that. It's a recreational opportunity as well as a tourism opportunity, and it improves the quality of life available for those who enjoy our natural beauty. And this is a family-oriented recreational sport, if you will. To get back, just to touch back on the membership a little bit from 22,000 to 31,000 currently. Over that period of time, that's a significant increase in membership all on its own. But over that period of time, there's been a great rise in the number of side-by-side vehicles as opposed to the standard ATV vehicles. And we've had a lot of two ATV families because they had mom and dad and a couple of kids, so they had to have two bikes to go ATVing kind of thing that had upgraded, if you want to call it that, to a side-by-side where everybody can go in the same vehicle. But what that does is it cuts the membership in half because the vehicle is the actual member. So when you trade in two bikes and buy one side-by-side, that's one membership now instead of two. So that increase in the membership becomes even more important to us just based on that sort of criteria all on its own. So on a managed ATV trail, again, under the Off-Road Vehicle Act, that definition of managed ATV trail, landowners are protected from liability. Quad NB carries a $5 million liability policy on all of our managed trail. Of course, every ATV has to have liability insurance of their own to operate, the same as a motor vehicle. And with the purchase of a trail permit from Quad NB, the riders are protected, or the permit holders are protected by additional insurance benefits. And this is a partnership that we have with AIL Insurance, which provides a accidental death benefit, which is free to all members. It's an automatic thing. You have it. It's free of charge just by becoming a member. I'm sure you've probably heard of it before. They work very much with a lot of organizations, federations, unions, that sort of thing. So we'll touch a bit on the economic impact. We did a report in 2018. There was a company out of Ontario was hired to do this survey, and the determination was the annual impact of ATV activities in New Brunswick was $358 million. Now that generates a GDP of $272 million, and the labor force incomes of $165 million. Those are significant numbers, of course. We are in, now that's 5 years ago, we do this every 5 years, so we're now just in the beginning stages of doing a new one in 2023, working with Department of Tourism to get the right numbers in the right focus. The projections that we have, the number gets projected each year, even though we don't do a full out survey. The projection for this, the upcoming report would be 464 million. So you can see the rise just simply in the annual impact over a few years. And a lot of that legal access to these amenities is good for especially the smaller areas. For local businesses, it's a boost to the local economy. It's a great opportunity. It's a necessity for the rider and for the tourism, for the tourist or the tourism product. I can tell you, I live in Macadam. I have never been to St. Stephen on my side-by-side, but I go quite often to St. George. And the reason being is that there is no access in St. Stephen to food and fuel, or no legal access, I should say. So this is one of the one of the things that, that we're taking a step back and looking at this and saying, where are we missing the boat here, and what are the opportunities for this? So, and because of that, we're currently working with the town of St. Stephen, which is a somewhat larger town now, to provide some access to those amenities. We're very grateful that we have the opportunity to speak with you folks about coming to Grand Bay-Westfield for that very reason. So safety, we'll touch on that just a bit. You can see on the screen the logos of all the partnerships that we do have that help us promote ATV safety. We have done as well quite a you see Rogers TV in there, and they represent, there was a TV program, or there was 14 episodes basically of, it was called Quad AB, and we did an episode, 14 of them around the province, various areas. We talked about the area in itself, the riding opportunities that are there, et cetera, and also about the various safety and education programs that we have in each of these areas. We do have training that we provide. We have 8 certified instructors throughout the province, and we provide very generous discounts on the cost of these trainings for members of Quad AB, or members of a local ATV club, and their children. Under the Off-Road Vehicle Act, anyone under the age of 16 must have the safety course, must have completed it successfully, and they must be supervised by someone, an adult, who has also had the safety course. So the children get an 80% discount on the fee for that, and the adults get 50% discount. We hold these courses mostly throughout the summer. We have done them in the winter. Through the winter months, depending on where we're at. And the way it works essentially is you sign up, you can go to Quad MB, sign up for the course, and when there's enough interest in any given area, we will schedule a course for that area. And it doesn't have to be a huge amount. Under the guidelines of the course, the instructors are limited to, I think, like 8 kids in a course, and 6 adults for an adult course. So it's not 1-to-1, but it's very close. These are day-long courses, and there's a lot more to them than what you would think. They are really well done, really well put on, and we train about 350 kids a year on average over the last 5 years. That's very important. This is very important. It's not just the law, but it's also part of getting that training out there while they're young, and getting them used to operating these things safely. We work with on a daily basis with basically 5 provincial government departments, but we work very closely with public safety. Because they are the enforcement folks in the province now. All enforcement falls under public safety now. And they are the folks that you're going to deal with the bylaw in question here. So what you've seen on your screen there now is a brochure that they put out. You can find it on their website, and as well as a lot of other information that the government posts there, or public safety posts, concerning off-road vehicles or ATVs specifically. So the legislation, I just want to touch on this because we do get asked this quite often. So under the Act, the liability clause that I talked about earlier, no action or proceedings shall be commenced against an owner, specifically a municipality, it mentions, for any injury, loss, or damage suffered as a result of a person using, operating, riding, or being towed by an all-terrain vehicle on an all-terrain vehicle managed trail. So if the trail on your property meets the criteria of a managed trail, then you're covered under the legislation. It becomes our liability issue under our liability policy that we hold on all of our managed trails. So if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to try and get the answer for you. It's fairly straightforward. If we just get away from the municipality here, but in a private landowner situation, for instance, we have landowner agreements that we ask the landowner to sign, we make a point to reference the liability clauses. There's a waiver of liability in the agreement itself, as well as the legislation that backs them up here. The Off-Road Vehicle Act is also the act where a municipality gets its authority to enact a bylaw that governs off-road vehicles or ATVs. And under Section 37 of that, it says that you can and you may enact a bylaw subject to the approval of the minister. And so basically what that means is after second reading, first and second reading, the proposed bylaw will be sent to Department of Public Safety, Justice and Public Safety now, for their review and approval by their minister. Once that's obtained there, you'll get a letter saying that it's been approved, and then you can proceed with third reading and enactment of the bylaw there. And the last clause there is where it basically limits the imposition of penalties to $100 for each offense. We should note, I guess, this is probably a good time to note, if you read through the bylaw, all of the clauses in there, or I should say most of the clauses in there, are clauses that can be found in other acts of legislation. So the fine for not adhering to the particular clause may not actually come from your bylaw, but it may be a much higher fine as you're being ticketed from a different piece of legislation. So if you're not wearing a helmet, for instance, it's in the bylaw that you have to wear a helmet, but if you're caught not wearing it, you're probably going to get fined under the Motor Vehicle Act for not wearing a helmet. So it's a lot stiffer fine. So it's not $100 across the board. It's the officer up to his choice how he wants to handle these fines. So at the tail end now, there's a list of municipalities that have approved ATV or ORV bylaws in place. This particular list is in alphabetical order. If you take a browse down through it, you will see that there are some repeat customers here. City of Bathurst has 2. The town of Sussex has 2. The town of Tracadie now has 3. And we expect that, of course, that we're going to see some additional either amendments or new bylaws from some of these places now that they have been subject to the amalgamations. So there are 29 currently that's on your list that are fully improved and enacted bylaws. There are another 16 in the queue with Department of Public Safety right now. So we provide this list to all municipalities that we talk to about this. We provide the list and ask you, reach out to these guys and, they're your peers and talk to them, see how they're making out, what they would do or wouldn't do, or what, how it's been since they've done this. We started out in 2018 with a single bylaw, added 4 or 5 in the next couple of years, but in 2022 we have added 15 municipalities to the list in 2022 alone. So that, my folks, is my presentation. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to field them for you.
Thank you, Vince. I appreciate that. That was a very comprehensive presentation, and certainly gave me some facts that I didn't know. So just a quick question. The list you gave me of the off-road vehicle bylaws, did you say that there's another 16 in addition to this list that are with JPS right now for review?
Yes, they're at various stages of the review process. So they may be at the point where we're assisting them in writing the bylaw, or it may have been already submitted to public safety. Once public safety receives it, they submit a copy over to Department of Transportation and Infrastructure for their comment. So it's not just public safety that reviews and okays these, but so that can sometime, take up to a few months that they may sit in there. But yes, there are 16 currently in the works at some stage.
Okay, thank you for that. Council, do we have any questions for Mr. Johnson? Councillor Bailman?
I just wonder with the age of the biking, how do they get insurance? Like 6 years old, 11, how do they get insurance on a bike?
Insurance falls on the owner of the bike. So if the bike insurance is separate from the operator. So the parent buys the bike in order to get, you need to insure the bike. That's the law. So the bike would be insured for regardless of who's operating.
It'll be hard to ask, say, when you get in an accident, you said it was a 6-year-old driving my bike. How do you, I don't understand that. I mean, it's
Well, six-year-olds are very limited to the size of the bike that they can ride. So if you own a Honda 680 ATV and you got your 6-year-old driving on that and there's an accident or whatever, then the fault is going to be on the 6-year-old or the parents, because that is a bike that the child should never have been driving. So there are regulations for those under 16 as to the size of the bike that they can operate.
How do you self-police? Do you guys self-police at all on your trails, or do you just wait for the off-road vehicle people to enforce the law? Do you guys do self-policing yourself? Like,
there is a limited amount of self-policing we find within each local area. It's not a program that we have in place or anything like that, but we do find that, especially when we have things such as municipal bylaws or highway usage permits, things like that, or even certain landowners are, who are kind of on the fence, or you have a trail through their blueberry field, for instance, and the next thing you know, some guy's running across the field off the trail, those sorts of things. So when those things come into play, we do find certainly that the club members and even non-members, just local people, that they see that stuff happening, they'll make an effort to correct that. They'll talk to the young fella or the parents or whoever to try to get that straightened out, because these are all things that we can lose. These are privileges, whether it's a bylaw or a highway usage permit, those sort of things. They can be hauled away just as quick. So people who are enjoying the use of them will, they will endeavor to self-police to a certain extent. Now, it's not just off-road vehicle enforcement that polices these trails. Any peace officer has the authority to do this. So we do see a lot of conservation officers on the trail, and we do see them even if they're driving into town to, go to Tim Hortons to get a coffee. If they see somebody on an ATV doing something they shouldn't be, they'll stop them. It's part of their mandate now as well. So it's not just the off-road cops. Now, just recently, I'll say in the last 6 or 8 months or so, sometime last year, off-road vehicle enforcement joined forces with commercial vehicle enforcement to basically triple or quadruple the members, the number of officers out there. And the way they did this, of course, was each of them learned each other's jobs. So any of these guys, and so instead of having 12 off-road cops, there's now 50 of them out there that can do that job. So they can be called in at any time, and a lot of times it's not just the off-road vehicle enforcement you'll see on the trail. You'll see that maybe 1 or 2 of those guys in conjunction with conservation officers or RCMP officers or that sort of thing. So the force has been built up, and you will see as managed trails network grows, you will see more and more policing presence because of that.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We've got a time crunch, so I think what we'll do at this point is we'll get Mr. Burke to come up and do his presentation about the local club, and then we'll open it for further questions afterwards. Welcome, thanks Rob for being here.
Thank you all for allowing us to come in to do a quick presentation. I will just touch on the questions to clarify a little bit. You were asking about the 6-year-old. So my daughter's 12. I buy the ATV. The ATV goes in my name, so it's insured under me. As Vance had mentioned, when we're out driving, She has to be within sight or distance of me so she can see me. So she is allowed to follow me on the groomed trails. The bike is technically in my name and insured in my name because she wouldn't be able to get insurance. So it's, and the other question I'll just touch on, off-road enforcement. I'm sure you people have seen them in the areas. They're the ones that have the black and yellow vehicles. They're out. They have them for snowmobiling as well. But as Vance mentioned, the peace officers as well. So DOT, they used to be DOT. The peace officers now, they also have the ability to pull people over, or if somebody's, like you said, with no helmet on or breaking the law or whatever, they're allowed to step in as well. So I'll introduce myself. Some of you that know me, my name is Rob Burke. I am the president of the Grand Bay-Westfield ATV Club. I'm going on my 4th year. I did 1 year as a VP. Our members are around, in 2022 was around 500 members last year. I've lived in this community for almost 20 years now. Volunteered at about 25 years. I did 20 years at Lancaster Minor Hockey. Coached through those 20 years. In between there, did various jobs, VP, technical director, refereeing. The club started, the ATV club started in 2010. So when I took over president, people would, ask, and I kind of want to know, like, what's the biggest issue that we have in our area? And a lot of them are that they can't come in to get gas. They can't come in to get food, groceries, whatever they might need. So what happens is, when that happens, is they end up taking a risk. They end up coming down Highland, coming down Thompson, coming down Colonel Mace, to try to get into those amenities that obviously they can't access because we don't have legal access to come in there properly. So they're always risking to get caught. It's a risk of where you're going to go to be able to get to whatever you want to get to. Since 2019, 2020, we'll talk, since COVID restrictions came out, outdoor recreation and outdoor activities have exploded, which is probably one of the very positive things that have happened since COVID. And it's allowed people to be out to enjoy the outdoors and nature the way that we can see it. This is backed up by sales in travel trailers, boats, snowmobiles, and of course ATVs that we would be interested in. For me personally, ATVing is probably one of the most relaxing things that I can do as a person. I feel that I can go and have the worst day ever at work or whatnot, and I go out on my ATV and out with nature, watching the waves crashing on the shore, or just kind of going through, maybe even catching a little bit of wildlife here and there. It's one of the most relaxing things to me to be able to do. As Vance mentioned, I'll talk about that a little bit. Quad MB, it started in the 90s, it was around 3,000 members. In 2018, it went up to 22,000 members. And as he mentioned, in 2022, last year, it was over 30,000 active members in Quad MB. And that's provincially, of course. Economic benefits to business owners in our general area in Grand Bay-Westfield. I have reached out to Paul at Schulten's. He has been way more than supportive of us, getting this on board or trying this. I've talked to Phil at the Irving, and I've also spoke with Melissa and Ryan at Pizza Light and Highlands that they are fully in support of us having controlled access. Quad MB's goal, as Vance had mentioned, is to have a provincial-wide trail. And our gap, where we would come from, our territory would be in Clarendon, Wellsford area. So there is a club in the Fredericton Junction area that would run up that way. So we would go to Clarendon, Wellsford area. So our gap would be in between here and there. We do have managed trails in the Clarendon, Wellsford area, It is a 3-season trail. That's actually, it's under construction right now because the Snowmobile Club uses it this quarter, or this type of year. Our goal, obviously, is to bring ATV traffic into the Grand Bay-Westfield Business District. We want to have managed trails to be able to come in so that people could come in and access the road, obviously at a controlled environment. We have a couple of warming shelters. One is out at the end of exit 80, which is the flashing light exit. The warming shelter is in the back area of Cranberry, they call it. It's a warming shelter that we've had there since probably we started. We also have another shared shelter on the Henderson Lake Road that we share with the Warrenville Trail Riders. It's kind of a merged shelter that we've shared expenses on to try to have an area where people can go to get warm. One of the things that we're very excited for, I don't know if you guys have seen it or not, but we're having our very first Winter Link run. And it is in conjunction with the Warrenville ATV riders. We're going to be having it on February the 25th. We're trying to link all 3 shelters in one day, so people in the area or in the Warrenville area could possibly be able to see our trails and their trails in areas where they might want to travel. There's a lot of people that are in the area, have ATVs or side-by-sides, and don't really know the trails or don't really know the area. So it's going to be a great way for people that want to do that to get out. We're going to have guided tours, guided people going from each shelter to each shelter so that people can feel comfortable in coming out to that. And the proceeds for that are going to be donated to our local food banks, so our Grand Bay one and the West Side one, which is the next reason that we wanted to be in collaboration with Warrenville, as they are a neighboring ATV club. So we're trying to work with them as much as we can because they're basically just on the other side of us. So we want to try to connect with them and try to make it as a gained route. As Vance mentioned, since 2018, there's been 29 bylaws that have been approved so far in the province. The closest success story to us is the Sussex one. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, but for a couple of years, they had it from the back roads of Sussex just into the Superstore, which is right in behind Kent's. Just in this year of August 2022, they allowed people to go right downtown Sussex, which is like, down through the business district. It's pretty awesome to drive down through a small town like Sussex and you stop at the light by Tim Hortons, you can see ATV traffic only this way. It's a really nice feeling to know. So people down there, they basically have livened up their revenues come in from ATVers going in there. It goes all the way down to All Seasons Restaurant, almost down to Sussex Corner. So it's quite a span right from the Superstore all the way down through Main Street and everything in Sussex. So, in these bylaws, as Vance mentioned, I will say that every rider has to have a valid driver's license. You have to have valid insurance. You have to follow all the ATV safety rules, so helmet, and they have to have registration, and they have to have a valid trail pass to be on the roads. If the law is approved, if this bylaw is approved, we will be applying for permission to have a trail from the Colonel Nace Boulevard at the top of Colonel Nace all the way to Hillendale to the double tunnels. We do have trails that will go there, but they're not very user-friendly at this point. So we're going to apply to have a trail put across there that's going to be whatever Quad MB would have for their specific trail, like 20 feet wide, whatever the regulations are, so that we can connect from the double tunnels at Hillendale right to the top of Colonel Nace, which is where the gap would be. It's about a 4-kilometer trail that would basically put us almost parallel with the Highway 7. We're also working with a few landowners and the Crane Mountain landfill to have a trail along the side of Highway 177 basically going out of Grand Bay. It's going to be on the left-hand side. And I know I've done it a bunch of times. I'm coming down into Grand Bay and you see ATV traffic on the side of the road, outside the guardrail, on the shoulder of the road. So we're trying to get that so we can have an ATV trail inside that wood line, kind of so that it's going to be in deep enough so that headlights at night are not going to affect oncoming traffic and cars there. I want to talk a little bit about how Newfoundland and their tourism. They have an actual Facebook page. Some people can go and look at it. They have great success over there to Newfoundland. It's a rock. It's considered to be a far distance. People will go. You can actually drive right to the North Sydney ferry, get off your truck and trailer with your ATV, and drive right on the Marine Atlantic ferry, and it takes you to the far end of Newfoundland. And you can come across Newfoundland. It's about 700-800 kilometers, depending on how many days and how fast you want to go. You can be 7 to 8 days. But all those small towns and communities over there have exploded with revenue that has come in because the ATVers are coming into their communities. It's actually one of my bucket list things that I would like to do. There's spectacular views over there, and scenery that should be seen. That's all I have. Anybody have any questions for me?
Thanks, Rob, I appreciate that. I have a question. So when staff was looking at putting this bylaw together, they consulted with you fairly extensively in terms of what controlled access means and what your riders were hoping for in terms of that. Did they not think?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what was the wish list?
So the wish list we had was down Colonel Nays, all the way to the bottom where Guardian is, then to turn left and come as far as the Irving.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Yep.
We're sort of like we're running a bit late, but does anybody have any specific questions for Mr. Burke regarding the bylaw or the club?
Great presentation.
Yes,
Thank you very much. Very informative.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was a great presentation, and I appreciate that very much. I know that four-wheeling is an important part of the Grand Bay-Westfield culture, and I certainly recognize that it can bring economic development to the area, so thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
The motion on the table is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file the information as presented. Thank you, Councillor Bellmans. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you. We're on to item 7C, Code Red. We have our fire chief, Troy Guttrow, presenting on the Code Red.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Very quick presentation, there's only 1 or 2 slides. Actually, there's really one. I went right to the last one. There we go. There's only 1 slide that we'll actually have some conversation on, and the last one's just for some questions. So basically, we just want to do a really quick review of Code Red and our emergency alerting system for the community, partially as a review for the former Grand Bay-Westfield portion of the community, as well as to let everyone in Ward 2 know that the system is now up and running in that area. The mapping is now complete, so everyone that's in Ward 2 can go on and register. And so what Code Red is and Code Red it's completed by a company by the name of OnSolve, and it's an emergency alerting system that supplements the national and provincial alert ready system. So that it doesn't replace it, and when you get one doesn't mean you'll necessarily get the other. And any significant emergency would most likely go through Alert Ready. This Code Red one for our municipal alerting system is really more for just local types of things, whether it be flooding or if there was an incident specifically in Grand Bay-Westfield that wasn't necessarily affecting other areas. Most policing type of issues, I will say, would most likely come from Alert Ready rather than this system. So we do encourage everyone in the municipality to sign up when they can. You can receive alerts by text, you can receive voicemails to your home phones, and you can receive emails. There is also a cell phone application, so you can just receive push alerts right directly to your cell phone. Let's see. So the other part I wanted to do really quickly is just run through. So when you go to the page, and this image on the right here of the slide is actually the login or your account creation screen. You can get to that. You go to the town webpage, grandbaywestfield.ca. Up at the top, there's a little sign up for emergency alerts section. Actually, it's not on the top, it's kind of in the middle. It will be at the top someday soon. And this is a page that you'll eventually get to. So you can create a managed account, or you can create one as simply a guest. We recommend the managed account. All that means is you're actually signing up with a username and a password that you can then later go in and change. So if your email changes, your phone number changes, or you know what, I don't want to get text and phone, I just want to get text, whatever changes you want to make. When you do it as continue and enroll as a guest, you're simply going to put in a phone number or an email, and then that's it. It's just kind of, there's no way of really changing that. You can unsubscribe, however, to actually just make changes, it's best to do that. And then there is an option at the very top to log in with Google, Facebook, or log in or Twitter, but that's not necessary. You can simply create a username, password, confirm your password, and you go to the next screen, which brings you to your address. With that, that's for the most part what I had on it, unless there was any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Do we have any questions for the Chief from Council?
Just a quick one, do we know how many people have signed up so far? Do you have?
So it's a unique system. The only way we can really tell how it's signed up, and this is all to do with the confidentiality. So when people sign up, we don't have access to that information. It's kind of locked away in a cyber vault somewhere. So how we can find out, and I did do it this afternoon, anticipating this question, is if I go through the process of actually sending an alert, and right before I hit the button to send, it'll come up and say how many people it's going to go to, and today that was 892. So that sounds like a reasonable number, but we're now a population of 6,800. I'm not sure the number of homes in the new community, but it's, or 5,800. Yeah, sorry, I added 1,000 there, but I'm saying.
Yes, close to our.
Yeah, I'm just thinking down the road. So yeah, we still got a little ways to go there, so those who haven't signed up, definitely take the time. Thank you.
Just one quick question. So in terms of gathering more people to sign up, we're just sharing that on Facebook and encouraging with posts?
Yes.
And sharing the link?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Chief, it's my understanding further on down the line, we'll be able, once we get more people on board and we go further with the on-solve system, the code red system, we can add other alerts on there as well, can we not, other than just emergency alerts?
Yes, we can create different things, so it's, whether there's programming, you can have general alerts or even just email notifications or text notifications, and it can have to do with recreation, or it could have to do with public works, like a road closure. And you can create different categories that people could then sign up for. The issue is, being a small community, there are some of those things that may only happen once a year, so it's kind of it's a big workload to kind of generate it, get a bunch of people to sign up, and then not really have some. So we want to make sure that when we do move forward that it's a meaningful process for everyone.
Thank you. We have any other questions for the Chief? All right, thank you very much. And I would like to encourage anyone that's watching that hasn't already signed up for the code red system, please go ahead and sign up. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file the information as presented. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Do I have a second? Councillor Balcom, thank you. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 8, minutes of previous meeting. 8A, regular council minutes of January 9th, 2023. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of January 9th, 2023 as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Balcom. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Item 9, unfinished business. There being none, we'll move on to item 10, bylaws. 10A, ride sharing bylaw. And actually, John, we'll get you to speak to this one before we dive into it.
Sure, and if, Your Worship, if you don't mind me just, before I answer that, can I just ask residents to, if you're concerned about any of the bylaws, we're doing bylaws all year. We did 6 last council meeting, we're doing 4 this evening. Just ask people that if they're interested, please go on our website, review the bylaws. If you have a concern about the ATV or the off-road vehicle bylaw and its access to roads, we're doing an accommodation levy this evening. We've done remuneration last week. Please email the town at administration or phone and leave a comment. Ask for Amanda and find free. The mayor saw my scouts today. I'm pretty booked usually, but if I'm free, I'll be more than happy to take someone's call. But we really need feedback from everybody on our bylaws. We're going to be scheduling another public meeting coming up for the Ward 2 budget presentation. And just with the scheduling, it's tough to have an open house on bylaws. So I just want to emphasize, Your Worship, that people please check our website, check the draft bylaws, and if you have a concern or a question, please let us know. Either email administration@towngvw.ca or phone, ask for Amanda. If I'm free, I'll be more than happy to take the call. If I'm not free, well, obviously it's a little bit more challenging. But please leave a message. Get a hold of us somehow.
Thank you.
Okay. The ride sharing, this is just a means in which, Uber or Lyft, if someone takes an Uber from Halifax to here as an example, or Moncton or St. John to here, they'll be legally able to operate. We're not going to be doing the enforcement. They just have to be able to operate in the jurisdiction that they have to be able to operate somewhere. I was reading in the Times Journal as well today, Your Worship, that there's another ride-sharing startup just for New Brunswick. And, I don't recall the time frame for that offhand, but this just is another means of ensuring that there's more transportation opportunities for residents.
Thank you. And this is, we passed this bylaw in 2022, but because of local governance reform and the fact that we are now a larger community, we have to repass it again so that it applies to the entire new town of Grand Bay-Westfield.
So Councillor Burpee can now, well, she will be able to take Uber home. Legally.
All right, so I'll just read the motion and open for questions. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield adopt by summary and title in the first and second readings of the bylaw respecting ride-sharing number GG-005, first reading by summary. Bylaw number GG-005, Town of Grand Bay-Westfield bylaw respecting ride-sharing. The purpose and intent of the ride-sharing bylaw is to enable ride-sharing within the town limits. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Second reading by title. Bylaw number GG-005, Town of Grand Bay-Westfield bylaw respecting ride sharing. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. We have any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you, Council. We'll move on to item 10B, roads accessible to off-road vehicle bylaw. And John, can you speak to the bylaw, please?
Well, I think Mr. Johnson and Mr. Berg did a great job of speaking to the need for it. I just want to bring council's attention that we're going to be editing this already for the third reading. And if you look at 2B, in height, when I went over it again today and then I consulted with Rick, kind of realized there's some ambiguity in how you would interpret this. So what we're proposing for the third reading is that no person shall drive an off-road vehicle on any roadway within town limits except for Highland Road, Colonel Nays Boulevard, Route 77 applications designated. So just for clarity, there is only that part of River Valley Road leading to and ending at the Irving and along Colonel Nays up to Highland Road that off-road vehicles will be able to travel on. I'd also like to say that I don't know if council remembers when they asked the sergeant about off-road vehicles, he'd like some help. Talking with him, this is the type of help that he needs. Having said that, it's still a bit of a challenge for them to enforce off-road vehicles, especially if they take off, which happens more often than not. But the sergeant did say that generally most off-road vehicle operators are law-abiding and want to work with the authorities and with the town, so.
Okay, thank you, John. So I'll do the first reading and open it up to questions after the motion. The motion is that the council of the town of Bay-Westfield adopt by summary and title in the first and second readings of the roads accessible to off-road vehicle bylaw number PR-001. First reading by summary. Bylaw number PR-001. The purpose of this bylaw, in accordance with the Off-Road Vehicle Act, establishes roads accessible to off-road vehicles operating within the town of Bay-Westfield. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Bailmans. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Balcom. Do we have any questions or comments on the motion? Deputy Mayor Toole.
I had a few questions. Some were answered by the presentation, and one, I was wondering if we consulted with RCMP or JPS, and I was told JPS that this has to go to the Minister of Justice and Public Safety before it's done, but has RCMP been consulted on?
I just spoke to that.
Yes.
Okay, but if they haven't been consulted on the enforcement side of it, like you're saying, they're looking forward to help, but who will be there?
So my understanding is that RCMP worked with Quad ND, and the sergeant, like I said, is actually excited about bringing this bylaw forward. Consulting with residents, I asked people to provide us with feedback. It would be nice maybe to have another meeting. We've kind of had a lot of meetings this month, and we're having a special budget meeting on the 9th? 7th for the Ward 2. But just ask people to let us know. My understanding is that we have less than a handful of homes between Colonel Nays and the Irving. However, that doesn't mean that the number of homes on Colonel Nays won't change, either through apartment or a long-term care institution or something like that. However, I think most residents of Grand Bay-Westfield and most other communities are aware that ATVs tend to travel a lot of places that maybe they shouldn't.
And a quick one, it's not addressed, but I noticed there's like the funds that go, everybody has to have a trail pass if they're gonna be on these roads, but is there any money from the trail passes going to the town at all for maintenance of the roads or upkeep, or is that something that's been considered or done in the other ride sharing bylaw?
Not that I'm aware of, but they're not as hard on town or municipal roads as say a concrete truck or something like that.
No, but I'm thinking of like the cleaning, if there's added dirt or if there's added anything like that, that was just my.
No.
And the other quick one I had, there's no limits on here, there's no like decibel limits for sound, there's no time limits on, like, is this all hours of the night, they're okay to go up and down? Just thinking residents might be concerned, depending on.
Yeah, so some of that comes back to enforceability. The RCMP do not carry decibel meters. They don't have devices to measure sound.
But like a time limit maybe,
Well, sorry, you asked about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now the time thing, I think some of it is going to be, excuse me, self-enforced, just in the sense that Schultens and the Irving are open all night. So that will be it. And again, it's also an enforceability issue about how many RCMP do we have to monitor that.
And I support, I love the tourism and bring people in, you don't want to be left out. I do believe on bringing the ATVs to local businesses safely, all of those I'm in favor of. Just when, it's funny though, if you ask me the one thing that people have brought to my attention since being a councillor, the one thing is, what do we do about the ATVs on the roads? How can we, not that they don't want them loud in the middle of the night, running through, and I think it's, if we're saying, yes, we're gonna allow this, I think it'd be great if we had limits, and I know there's concerns about enforceability, but I just my word, I like all the benefits and I really like the presentations and it was really informative, and I do know why we want this. I just wanna make sure we're really letting people know what we're doing to address the concerns if we can. If we're saying it's not enforceable, then that's kind of tough, then we're putting this in place and we're saying we're not gonna monitor it, so that's why I'm a little, make sure we have the right limits in there.
My understanding though is most operators aren't the ones who want to drive at night. You know, you get the other types of individuals who may want to drive their ATVs at night. You know, most people, the families that you see, they need daylight to do it. So this is a bit of a challenge, but there's always some, like in my house just after I moved here, some guy in an ATV turns around the corner and 10 meters past the corner, he was off of it, staggered to his ATV because he didn't have his helmet on, knocked his head on the road, and called somebody to come get him. There are going to be those riders.
No, I was just wondering if there's something that, because there's a whole bunch of other bylaws, are there any ones with time limits, night limits, like, cause there's kind of, like, lights and stuff.
So there's a couple that have tried that, but they really haven't had success. The amendments that you see, like in Tracadie and Bathurst, they've extended the route, because the first, like, we're trying this for 18 months or something like that. And in those other communities that has worked so well, they've decided, well, you know what, maybe the best way to address some of these other issues about, people riding where they shouldn't be riding is giving them recognized routes to follow and manage the noise that way, manage the time that way. So that's what's happened in Tracadie and Bathurst as an example. Rick, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think you're covering that there has been attempts at the time pieces, but 95% of riders, when you're speaking of YMB, those are the people who follow the rules, that's their rule followers, and the ones that aren't their members, and you have to be a member, you actually have to have that pass in order to follow the bylaws, so that's part of the reason their membership is up. So people are saying, oh, there's a benefit, I'm gonna sign up, I'm gonna be a part of the group, and be more willing to follow the rules. But the timing thing has been very difficult. The noise thing, they bring up motorcycles is the most common thing, because it's the same thing, people want to rip around on their motorcycles at any time, there's enforceability of that decibel is so difficult, right? So they really have struggled with enforcing the time, but there has been a couple bylaws that have them.
They do have
In the minority. And
Yeah,
they follow the business hours.
Yeah, because if it follows the business hours, I think that's what if we're looking for this for businesses, maybe that might be something to look into, because if people who have to have the trail passes are the ones who want to do it during the daylight and want to do it during business hours, then I don't see, we're not limiting it by putting a time limit. It might be easing people's fears if we do have a time limit. If that's something we can look into, or at least let us know where it's worked, if it has worked anywhere, that might be.
The comments have been that there hasn't been the ability to stop the concerns, because it's the riders who want to ride at 2 a.m. when they leave someone's home. That's not going to stop just because of the business hours, but those are the same people riding at the other end of the road in areas, I've seen.
Right, so the bylaw is not, they're just breaking the law in general, they're not, the bylaws.
And the RCMP can enforce that
And
when
this
they see them.
And now this is very clear. They're not supposed to be.
Do we have any other questions? Councillor Bellman?
Well, I brought up last time, Sergeant Sampson, about the noise, the decimal points, but is there a common sense to hear the noise? That's why I was talking about, say, our question to Mr. Burke there about self-policing. How can they say a loud muffler on a bike? Can they self-police that or with themselves? Say it's too loud. We're trying to get a bylaw passed to go through our town, maybe she would say, self-police, say, you shouldn't have them off for your bike, you should put stop walking back on your bikes, that doesn't be concerned to people in our town, noise, right? In the middle of the night, screaming up down the streets. Like I said, when I saw that, I had Schultz that day, and then he turned the bike up, and the wind just shook. I said, that's something wrong there, if you can't hear that, there's something wrong, for common sense for decimal points.
Yeah, I think for enforceability, it's the issue, because they actually have to have the number on a device.
But I'm saying self-policing should be in their own organization, because they want to use our roads in our streets, and they should say, well, maybe you shouldn't be on the road. They should say, well, I don't know how they're gonna enforce it, but.
Yeah, I think there'll be an increased impetus towards that self-policing, because they don't wanna lose.
They want to do a good thing, right? They want to, yeah.
Yeah, and again, this bylaw is not targeted against, like, towards the bad actors.
Right.
Because they're going to do what they're going to do regardless. This bylaw is targeted to the responsible users, the people that, you know, that we wanna come here with their families and their side-by-sides from Charlotte County or other places.
Yeah, no question. People drive from their houses from like Point 8 down to Brandy Point 8 or Majestic up to Highland Road. Are they allowed to do that still?
No, this is controlled access, and it's meant to go from the trails to the services.
So for an example, you can go up Mallard Drive, and at the top of the hill there, quite often you'll see a number of trucks and trailers that have offloaded their off-road vehicles, and then there's a path that goes across the highway. However, you're still going to get people who think that, oh, there's a patch of land that'll take me from this court up to Woolastook or something like that. You know, some of those we've been ongoing battle, you know, and the ATV operators will move our barriers so they can get through.
It's gonna be a challenge.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a challenge now against with the people that aren't currently following the rules, but that's not who this bylaw is for. Those
So
the
how
people
did
that are breaking all of those rules and
Yeah.
not being good neighbors are people that should be targeted by the RCMP for enforcement.
Did you get a trail pass, and how do you do like a muffler inspection? How do you get a trail pass? I mean, you can't see that if I did buy one, they don't look at the bike, right? So, I don't know. It's gonna be tough.
Do we have any other questions or comments on the motion?
Just the map I found really hard. I was happy the answer you gave us about where it's going, I now know, but before I was told that it goes down from Lake Highland to the Irving, I couldn't tell by the map, so I'm wondering if this is the way that we can get, whether it's just my issue, just an easier, or a better description maybe of.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I know the language was gonna be fixed in there,
We'll
just so
provide
people
a-
can know.
We'll provide a better map next time.
Yeah, that's great, thank you. Yeah, I just wanna be clear that this is controlled access, it's not wholesale access to all of the roads. And also to, yes,
We'll finish.
and also I wanna make it clear that, you know, this, and I asked Rob that as well, Mr. Burke, when he was here, how were the roads decided on? And these were the roads that the club and the club members wanted, so it's, you know, we did this in full consultation with the actual riders.
And we've made it very clear in the bylaw, this is the only part that you're supposed to be on. If you're not there, it's not very clear to the RCMP, you shouldn't be there. So we're just providing clarity.
If there are no other further questions or comments, all in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you, council. Second reading by title, bylaw number PR-001, Town of Grand Bay-Westfield bylaw respecting roads accessible to off-road vehicles. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Councillor McIntosh Lawrence, thank you. Any questions or comments, John?
So your worship, Rick Adams joined us beginning of the summer or so. This is one of his first big projects, and I just want to tell council that I thought he's done a terrific job working with Quad NB and the local group to get this across. This is his first bylaw, so I just appreciation for Rick and what he's done.
Thank you, and yes, I echo that, thank you, Rick, this is good work, so thank you. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you, council. Item 10C, accommodation levy bylaw. John?
Your worship, this is, some people are wondering, why are we doing an accommodation levy bylaw? We don't have any of the traditional tourist accommodation sites. And even though the definition of what the tourist accommodation levy applies to is very clear, that it would include Airbnbs and Vrbo. The decision has been through St. John, and the whole region is following the same enforcement standard not to enforce it on Airbnbs. So even though there's no revenue coming from us now, there are other municipalities in the region that do have campgrounds and hotels and other traditional tourism accommodation units. And the whole region is to be set up the same so that there isn't an unfair advantage or something like that. And so this was agreed on when we signed the members agreement establishing Envision St. John, the Regional Growth Agency. That doesn't mean that there won't be more traditional tourism accommodations in the future, but for the time being, we're being a good partner and we're establishing uniformity across the region when it comes to accommodation levies.
Thank you, John. I'll read the motion and open the floor to comments. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield adopt by summary and title in the first and second readings of the accommodation levy bylaw number PD-001, first reading by summary, bylaw number PD-001. The purpose of this bylaw is to establish and collect a tourism accommodation levy in the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield pursuant to section 101.1 of the Local Governance Act. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Balcom. Any questions or comments on the motion? Yes.
Sorry, Your Worship, just for clarification. If and when this does happen, that we can actually collect revenue, what we're also asking council is that we'll ask Envision St. John to be able to administer all aspects of this. We don't have the administrative capacity to do that.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Second reading by title, bylaw number PD-001, Town of Grand Bay-Westfield bylaw respecting tourism accommodation levy. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Bailmans. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you, Council. Item 10D, bonding bylaw. John, would you speak to the motion, please?
This is probably one of the shortest and more boring bylaws that we have, Your Worship. We're required by legislation to have a bonding bylaw. And basically it just ensures that all the town employees, council, and persons performing duties for the town of Grand Bay-Westfield are protected against liability. And our coverage is $15 million. Just as a note, when the original version of this bylaw was established, 1998, it was $100,000 liability.
Wow, different now.
It's different now.
Thank you, John. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield adopt by summary and title in the first and second readings of the annual bonding of officers and employees bylaw number GG-006, first reading by summary, bylaw number GG-006. The purpose of this bylaw is to establish the bonding and liability amount for the employees, elected officials, and persons performing duties for the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Balcom. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Bailmans. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you, Council. Second reading by title. Bylaw number GG-006, Town of Grand Bay-Westfield bylaw respecting the annual bonding of officers, employees. Do I have a motion? Oh, sorry, is it you? Deputy Mayor Toole? Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Bailmans. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you, council. 11, new business recommendations. 11A, various town fees. John, can you speak to this one, please?
Yes, Your Worship, want to apologize, we should have had this out sooner. We'll do that in December probably is our goal this year. First and foremost, I would very much like to encourage council that we raise all the rates and help alleviate some of our revenue problems. However, at the end of the day, this is about revenue neutrality. All we're asking is users pay to cover the cost. I don't believe that we're charging anything excessive. Some of the rates and the various fees here are legislated. For an example, the one that's $1,000 on amending the municipal plan or the zoning bylaw, that's legislated. That's the fee that is in legislation, so we have no control over that. And some of the applications for that one, for an example, are $500 with the province. And then there's other fees that go along with that. So again, just want to encourage council that we're not trying to make extra money. Users pay and they're just covering the cost. That's just, we don't want to charge more or less than that.
Thank you, John. I'll read the motion and I'll open the floor to questions. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield adopt the various 2023 town fees effective January 24th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Bailmans. Do I have a second? What does that, thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Do you have any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Balcon?
Just one question under ball fields, number 2, ball field lining and dragging adult. In the next column, I don't quite understand how that calculation is made, and is a rate set for this coming year?
Thank you.
So Your Worship, that's a formula. And so for, I'll start with minor ball as an example. It's $4 per child that registers. So last year, there was almost 160 children. And so it's 4 times, 160, and that's how much they pay for the ball lining. Adults is different. It's around $1,000 just to line the fields, that is, to put the foul base lines down. And so that's about $1,000. And then there's $600 that the adult teams pay. It's $100 per team, and that's for the electricity and the lights. So it's a formula, it's not a clear cut. And the ball fields are done on a contract.
And that formula, Your Worship, that is calculated every year because electricity costs go up, line costs may vary.
Gary, Your Worship, the ball field light fee hasn't changed in a number of years. It's still $100 per team. But the lining and dragging fee on the formula is done by percentage. So if a team uses more field time, they pay more. If they use less field time, they pay less. And that's calculated on the basis and after the allocations have been made on the fields and the teams have their number of teams and registrations determined, they provide those numbers, and we calculate that fee.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Councillor Bailmans?
The fee for the ball fields, that's every time you use the field, $100 per game or?
Per season.
For the season, okay.
Per season. But I'd like to say, Your Worship, all these are going to be reviewed, and it's about user pay and revenue neutrality.
Councillor McIntosh Lawrence?
I just have a question about the peddler's license. Is that like a one-time fee? And then I have heard that this has prevented some people from doing business here because they think it's rather high.
Yeah, I think it's $150.
Yeah.
And yeah, so most actually I think almost all municipalities have that. If council recalls, this past fall, we did a pilot project where we waived the peddler fee for the food truck. And it's just a means that, do you want businesses just setting up willy-nilly? No, that's something we're going to review, including, why and where and stuff like that.
But 150 is like a standard rate.
Yeah, actually, I think I charge more in Battleford than we do here. I think it was $225 out there.
Any other questions or comments on the motion? So John, you say that we're gonna be doing a review on these fees, when in the work plan, when in the year do you think that will?
It'll come before council in December.
Okay, so this
So
is
we'll
where we're
pass-
basically being, this is set for the year and then.
Yeah.
Alright, any other questions or comments? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you, council. 11B, Municipal Capital Borrowing Board, snow equipment. John?
Your worship, I think I alluded to in our first budget presentation that we're kind of like a snake swallowing a snow control whole. It's proving tough on the digestive system. One of the ways we're trying to make it happen is through prudent borrowing. We want to purchase what's called the municipal tractor, but it's actually a trackless. It's the machine that most people will see going down the sidewalk and blowing snow to the side. And we're also looking at some attachments for that as well. And it's also a machine that we use in the summer, your worship. So this is a year-round piece of equipment that we'll be purchasing. And then the second piece is a loader with a plow. And that's for material loading, material handling, and other purposes as well. These things are rather multifunctional.
Thank you, John. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield submit to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board an application of authorization to borrow for a capital expense for the following term and amount. I'm trying to figure out how to read this. So transportation services, municipal tractor, $300,000, 10 years. Loader with plow, $300,000, 10 years. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Councillor Bailmans. Do you have any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Falcon?
We're borrowing $600,000 if this passes, and it seems to me this current fiscal year last fiscal year, we committed to the acquisition of a much needed new fire truck. I'm just wondering what our remaining legislated borrowing capacity will be if we approve this tonight.
John?
Yeah, so there's a formula in legislation that determines how much we're able to borrow against it. And the limit is, I think, just north of $36 million. I think it's around 30, it's over 36, isn't it? Just over 36?
Yeah, it's about 33.
Oh, 33, sorry.
Yeah.
And right now, what we're, our current borrowing is at 1.8 million. As you said, council authorized us to borrow up to 800,000. And then this would be a further 600. So our total would be about 3.2 million. So our current formula will bring us up to 3.2 million, which is about 30 million below the threshold that we're able to borrow against. And in no way would I encourage us to borrow up to that amount. Further, doing snow control, this is pieces of equipment that we need to do, and it's been outlined since the first presentation about what we need to do for our equipment. James, can you speak to the formula a little bit for the councillor that it's against our assessment base?
Yeah, so what the formula, there's two really important formulas. The first one is the total amount that we can borrow, so the 6% of our assessment base, which for 2023 works out to just under 33 million. And then the other formula that we have council needs to be conscious of is the percentage of the budget that's going towards debt repayments. So the general guideline is you want to stay under 20% of your overall budget going towards interest and principal payments. Currently we're around 4.5%. After these, the fire truck loan, and then if this is approved, will be around 5.5%. So still well below the recommended percentage on debt repayments.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Your Worship, so compared to many other municipalities, we're down at the low end of our capacity to borrow. A lot of other jurisdictions are, there's a number that are pushing 20. They have different dynamic than we have, and where they're experiencing more growth than what we are. So their likelihood of being able to carry that in the future is greater than ours. But we warn council and the public that we're under a lot of financial stress.
Thank you, Councillor Bellman, and then Councillor McIntosh-Lawrence.
Are these new items or used?
So we're looking at one being a new item, and the other one we're hoping to purchase is would be used with low hours.
Does that come with a deal from the other stuff we're buying, or it's not included in the other package, or?
Well, the new is new.
Yeah.
The other one we hope to include it as part of the package.
Councillor McIntosh-Lawrence?
That was my question.
You got to it first, John. Any other questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Item 11C, donation of firefighter gear. John, should the chief speak to this one?
Yeah, I'll just do a highlight that the chief and this department go through gear, and then what do we do with it at the end of the day? So, Troy.
Right, so this specifically relates to our bunker gear that firefighters wear. It does have a 10-year lifespan, which when it expires to meet national, kind of somewhat international standards to enter hazardous environments. After that, it can no longer be worn for that use. It can be worn by newer members who aren't entering burning buildings per se. So with that, every so often we get this surplus. So right now we're sitting at about 20 sets of gear that it's surplus. So it needs to go to a landfill, or it needs to go to a great cause like this, where it's donated to countries or departments in countries who really can't afford much of anything, let alone some gear. So this kind of gives them a little bit of something versus nothing.
Thank you, Chief. The motion is that the council of the town of Bay-Westfield authorize the fire chief to donate surplus bunker gear to firefighters without borders, including shipping costs of $628.82. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh-Lawrence. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Bellman. Do you have any questions or comments on the motion?
The transportation cost, or where does that go to? What area? Overseas or Ontario? No? Toronto?
Toronto or Mississauga or something.
Yes, it's Ontario for sure. I'm not sure which city.
In Mississauga.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the lady.
That's right. I included the quote.
You did, yes. Any other questions or comments on the motion? I just want to say that knowing how dedicated our fire chief is to the care and of all of the equipment that the people that will be receiving this bunker gear are going to be very lucky, because I'm sure it's in tip-top shape even though it's expired and we're not able to use it by legislation, so. And do we have any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded?
Worship?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. For the borrowing, we didn't capture the mover and the seconder.
Oh,
Does anybody remember who
anybody remember who moved the
borrowing?
nobody remembers? Sure. Yeah, I know.
I think we kind of.
No, we didn't, I always check it off.
Okay.
Yeah, unless like you can look back at the recording and see it and see if I'm right or wrong. Would anybody like to volunteer the motion? I guess we
We can answer.
yeah, we can run through. Okay, all right. That's how I keep track, so, because sometimes I'll go ahead and so that's why I always have my check.
I usually write it down, but I didn't.
Okay, so now we'll move on to item 12, bills for payment. The motion is that the council of the town of Bay-Westfield authorize the January 23rd, 2023 bills for payment as presented in the amount for $261,243.34. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Do I have a second? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Any questions or comments on the motion? No? Red letter day. All right, if there are no questions or comments on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Item 13, consent agenda. 13A, letter, building budget solutions. B, memo, local governance orientation. C, program, local governance orientation. D, Envision St. John quarterly financials, Q3 2022. E, email, Center for Innovation and Research in Aging, dementia presentation information. F, St. John Regional Hospital, Love Your Hospital Radiothon. G, invitation, Greater St. John Chinese New Year Gala. And consent agenda. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Bay-Westfield receive and file the consent agenda items for January 23rd, 2023. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Balcom. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. We'll move on to item 14, council reports, and we will start with Councillor Murphy today.
Okay, so, on January 20th, we all attended the tour of the facilities throughout Grand Bay-Westfield, which was quite informative and really impressive to see how big the organization really is. And then we visited Ward 2 and toured around different sections of that. So it was really quite informative, and I enjoyed the day, and also to get to know all the counselors a little bit better, and learn personalities, and I really liked it. Also attending the LG orientation, the Zoom webinars that we've signed up for in the evening, which is quite informative as well. Being brand new, I don't know much, but I'm learning a little bit more, and I'm starting to really recognize everything that's being repeated, and so it's starting to get in there, so that's good. And yeah, so that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Bailman.
Well, like same with, we did the facility tours on 20th, and a few phone calls from residents, and that's about all it for me. So it's all good.
Thanks, John. Councillor Balcom.
Just like to add a few more words about the wonderful facilities tour. I've lived in this wonderful town for 25 years this year, and I had no idea, other than I think the fire department, when my son was really young, we brought him over for the October fire days, that we had such a diversity and a large amount of assets that are on the books of the town that need to be managed, and need to be serviced, need to be paid for, need to be painted, need to be have parts replaced. So it was a cold, windy, snowy day, and it was worth every minute of it. Thank you very much to all the staff who weathered the storm as well.
Thank you, Councillor Balcom. Deputy Mayor Toole.
I just want to build on that, as I echo everybody's comments, but that facilities tour was absolutely incredible. I had no idea. I think that the infrastructure for the sewage itself is enough to make you, it's incredible. And then the solar array was really amazing, sitting here and hear David talk about that and the impact it's having. And I think there's something online now we can do with our solar array where you can look and actually see the amount of energy that's being saved, etc. So just we learned a lot, and it was a great bonding experience, but it was also just it was really impressive. So I think it was an excellent idea. We kept talking amongst ourselves how great it would be to have residents come and take some of these tours and be able to see some of the stuff and really get an appreciation of what the staff does. So that's it mainly for me. Just before I end, I want to echo again what our CAO said about the bylaws. there's a lot of bylaws coming on here in the next few months, and there is a chance for you to get your input in, but you have to look at them, read them, and send it into the town, call or email, and get your input in, because there's a lot of them going through, ones you probably didn't know we had, and ones that are new, so it's really a good opportunity to get an idea of, I guess, the legal infrastructure of the town, and get your voice heard on the bylaws.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Councillor McIntosh Lawrence?
Again, I will echo the facility tour. I had no idea the knowledge that our staff has. It was really amazing to listen to them and the training and the knowledge that all the staff have. It was really quite incredible. So I just like to recognize them for that. And again, as Deputy Mayor Toole said, I would encourage residents to, the staff's probably gonna not like me for this because they're swamped as it is, but if they're interested, like the solar array or the lagoon, or like, I don't know if people can do tours, but it was really educational, and I would encourage residents to call, ask questions, or ask for a tour. The two other things that I had this month, we had our monthly community vitality meeting on January 10th, and talking about our family day and funding Winterfest, and our staff is actively working on that, so we're looking forward to that. And on January 17th was our monthly RBCC board meeting, and we're talking about the upcoming Rock the Rink in May, so that's something to look forward to, and implementing the strategic plan that was just completed.
Thank you, Councillor. John, did you want to?
I was going to suggest, Your Worship, based on what I've heard this evening, that the end of May, the third or fourth week in May is traditionally Public Works Appreciation Week. And maybe around then, we could do a bit of an open house for a limited time. For people to come and check out the solar array, get a whiff of the lagoon, check out some of the other things that we have. We also have, I don't recall, Fire Prevention Week. That's in the fall, isn't it?
Yes.
Just given the facility of the training facility, that, to have somebody be able to see what it is that they do, maybe be a recruitment tool. But community vitality could pitch a hand in. We could probably organize something for members of the public.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, because of course I was on the facility tour as well, and just hearing statistics and actually seeing them, like, Bruce, I think he said there's like 65 kilometers of sanitary sewer pipe in the town, and then an additional approximately 65 of storm sewer pipe. So that's all like subsurface infrastructure that nobody ever sees, but is still there and has to be maintained and rebuilt and function so that we can go, we can flush our toilets, we can drive down our streets without big massive puddles, etc. So it was, really, really impressive, and it just gives you an idea of how much work is done. Like 300 manhole covers? 600 that all have to be personally inspected. There's no drone that does that. So it really does give you an appreciation for how much work is done, how much infrastructure that is in the town that we really should be proud of. And also the fact that, our professional staff have set up an asset management plan that keeps all of these assets in tip-top shape and lets us know when it's time to replace them, and allows us to plan ahead 5, 10, 15 years in the future for these investments. That again, and these are all like bread and butter things. Like if your toilet doesn't flush, etc., then it's hard to move on with the rest of your day. It's important stuff. So my kids always say you're geeking out, Mom. So I was geeking out over the sewer pipes a little bit, but it's a municipal thing, I guess. So that was really great. It was nice to tour the infrastructure in Ward 2, through the lens of Councillor Burpee, so that we know what state the infrastructure is in there, what the people there think about it, the issues they may have that they're looking to get addressed. So because we're not here for just one part of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield, we're here for the entire town of Grand Bay-Westfield. And so there's no, for me, there's no before the flashing lights, after the flashing lights, over the bridge. We're all one town. So that's really, really important for people to understand. So I really liked that part, and again, seeing it through the lens of a resident that's lived there for a long time and knows the issues. So that was really great. I've been attending some of the local governance sessions online as well. And you can never hear those, those things too much. You can never, relearn those things too many times. So I've some of it's been pretty dry, but it's all been educational and interesting. And just to finish off, I know we've asked for a lot of public engagement here tonight. We've asked you all to sign up for Code Red. We're asking for input on the upcoming municipal plan and zoning bylaw changes that are going to affect Ward 2 specifically. We're asking for your input and your opinions and your concerns regarding the bylaws that we're going and changing. But this is really important. We actually need you to read these bylaws. We need you to show up at the sessions. We need you to send in your issues or your concerns or your suggestions on these bylaws. This is democracy in action. This is where we're asking for your civic participation, because we need that input in order to move on and make sure that we're doing things that represent what you want, that represent what is best for the municipality as a whole. So I know you've heard it from everyone tonight, but you're hearing it from me to finish things off. Please read the bylaws, send in your concerns, your questions, your suggestions. We really do need them. And once we start really opening up that procedure for the municipal plan bylaw, and we open up the website for public engagement for Ward 2, if you are online and sending in your questions, make sure you call one or two of your neighbors and encourage them to do the same thing. We really, really need that engagement from everybody. So thank you very much, everybody, and we will move on to item 15, which is business arising from Committee of the Whole. And there being none, we'll move on to item 16, which is adjournment. And the motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield adjourn the meeting at 9:03 p.m. And do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Bailmans. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Murphy. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Your motion is carried. Thank you very